This is a plea for the soul of a nation in 2026. To those who still stand on the sidelines, to the holdouts of our conscience, I offer this up. We have spent 11 years navigating a landscape of broken norms and fractured promises. From that first golden descent in 2015 to the current shadows of 2026, we have been told that the coarsening was necessary, that the dehumanization was strength, and that the insults were just a new way of speaking the truth. But today, there are no more excuses. The spell must break, not because of politics, but because of our shared humanity. To understand why, we look at three pillars of our civilization: the soul, the mind, and the heart. For those who claim a foundation in faith, the path is illuminated by the words of Jesus. He did not offer a national interest exception to the golden rule. In the spiritual economy, the stranger is not a threat to be managed or a pollutant to the blood. The stranger is the ultimate test of our divinity. When we hear immigrants described as vermin or animals, we are witnessing a direct rejection of Matthew 25. To turn our backs on the vulnerable is to turn our backs on the very essence of the faith many claim to protect. You cannot serve both the strong man and the Son of Man when their messages are in direct opposition. Moral philosophers like Immanuel Kant taught us that every human being must be treated as an end in themselves, never merely as a means to an end. When we use people as political props, whether it is the rhetoric surrounding Minnesota or the transactional talk of Greenland, we violate the basic logic of a civilized society. If we allow the dehumanization of one group today, we have effectively dismantled the shield that protects us all tomorrow. As the philosophers warn, a nation that abandons reason for tribalism eventually consumes itself. Now we turn to the heart, William Shakespeare. William Shakespeare saw our struggle for 4 centuries ago. In his plea for the strangers of London, he challenged the mob to look at the wretched strangers with their babies on their backs. He called the hatred of the immigrant a mountainish inhumanity. He asks a question that echoes throughout the halls of 2026. Whither would you go? What country? By the nature of your error? Should you give your harbor? Shakespeare's point was simple. We're all strangers in waiting. To deny home to the displaced is a guaranteed a world where no one is never, ever truly home. If you're looking for a mirror to our current 2026 movement in the 16th century, look no further than The Stranger's Case. While most of Shakespeare's work was published in neat folios, his most direct statement on immigrants wasn't found in a famous play like Hamlet. It was found in a censored, messy manuscript for a play called Sir Thomas More. It is widely considered the only surviving manuscript written in Shakespeare's hand. In a scene, a mob of Londoners is rioting, demanding the removal of the strangers, immigrants. Shakespeare's More steps into the scene and doesn't just quote the law. He performs a psychological unspelling of the crowd. More asks the rioters to imagine the logical conclusion of their hate. He tells them that they are successfully banishing the immigrants. They have simply taught the world that insolence and strong hands should prevail. He warns that eventually men like ravenous fishes would feed on one another. Shakespeare coined a phrase in his speech that feels like it was written for the rhetoric we've been hearing for the last decade. Mountainish inhumanity. He asked the rioters how they would feel if, as strangers in a foreign land, they found a nation of barbarous temper that would spurn you like dogs. He argues that the elements, air, water, earth, were not chartered only to the locals, but were a comfort provided by the God of all. Next, I'm going to have us turn our attention to the words of William Shakespeare in a famous scene from Thomas More play that shows how immigrants were being treated by Londoners 400 years ago. In this case, Shakespeare shows that the spell of xenophobia usually relies on dehumanization. Once you see the babies at their backs and the poor luggage, the political abstraction of the immigrant collapses into the reality of a human being. As you noted, the exodus from Trumpism isn't happening because the reality of 2026 politics or the mass deportation and the rhetoric of blood poisoning. It is finally clashing with the fundamental human empathy Shakespeare was pleading for 400 years ago. Now, let's turn to the words of William Shakespeare as I recite an excerpt from his play Thomas More, which reflects on how those words still echo in the treatment of immigrants today. Apologies to all the Shakespearean actors of the past, as I am not one. Grant them removed, and grant that this is your noise, hath chid down all the majesty of England. Imagine that you see the wretched strangers, their babies at their backs with their poor luggage, plodding to their ports and coasts for transportation. And that you set as kings in your desires, authority quite silenced by your brawl, and you in ruff of your opinions clothed. What have you got? I tell you, you have taught how insolence and strong hand should prevail, how order should be quelled, and by this pattern, not one of you should live an aged man. For other ruffians, as their fancies wrought, will self-hand, self-reason, and self-right would shark on you, and men like ravenous fishes would feed on one another. Oh, desperate as you are, wash your foul minds with tears, and those same hands that you like rebels lift against the peace, lift up for peace, and your unreverent knees, make them your feet to kneel to be forgiven. O King, you put down strangers, kill them, cut their throats, possess their houses, and lead the majesty of law against them, to slip him like a hound. Say now, the King, should so much come too short of your great trespass, as but to banish you, whither would you go? What country, by the nature of your error, should give you harbor? Go you to France or Flanders, to any German province, to Spain or Portugal? Nay, anywhere that not adheres to England. Why, you must needs be strangers. Would you be pleased to find a nation of such barbarous temper, that breaking out in hideous violence would not afford you an abode on earth? Whet thy detested knives against your throats, spurn you like dogs, and like as if that God owed not nor made not you, nor that the claimants were not all appropriate to your comforts, but chartered unto them. What would you think to be thus used? This is the stranger's case, and this is your mountainish inhumanity.